Quote number 1. A fool thinks himself to be wise, but a wise man knows himself to be a fool. This means that someone who is actually wise always considers himself or herself to be an idiot. And an actual idiot is someone who considers himself to be the wisest person in the whole world. The real wise person is always looking to improve himself or herself and tries to gather knowledge and applies it in his or her life. An idiot is someone thinks that he or she knows everything and constantly brags about his or her knowledge. A wise person is also aware of the fact that he or she cannot expect to know everything and focuses on gathering the right kind of knowledge which he or she can immediately apply to his or her life. A wise person always thinks before speaking and he or she speaks less. He or she always sees reality as it is and does not judge anyone based on their outer appearance. He or she is aware of the fact that human beings actually make a lot of mistakes and has an open mind to everything. On the contrary, an idiot is someone totally opposite. He or she thinks that he or she knows everything and talk a lot and continuously. He or she does not see reality as it is and is judgmental in case of others. He or she is closed-minded and does not try to learn from other people's point of views. Quote number 2. There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. This means that there are no good or bad thoughts. We actually put a label of right or wrong on our thoughts. Thoughts in reality are neutral and reality is what it is. What we think is bad may be good for us and what we think is good may be bad for us. For example, a person may think that he or she has a weakness that he or she can't communicate well with others. He or she might think that this is bad, but he or she does not realize that this thing can actually limit distractions for him or her and increase focus on the work that he or she is doing. This could be one of the person's strengths in disguise. Even people who do harm to others have a point of view and they act on that basis. That point of view might be that it is actually good for them and they enjoy it. Another way to understand this quote is that if we see fire, it is good as a source of energy but bad because it can burn things also. So we see that everything has its pros and cons. One thing to learn here is that we should use all thoughts inside us to do something useful. For example, if a person has a lot of anger inside of him or her, he or she should use it to work harder and for motivating himself or herself. Quote number 3. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. This means that there are some people who by birth are great, some people who strive to achieve eminence, and some people whose circumstances force them to become great. One example of born greatness could be that of princes in history who inherited status from their fathers. Another example could be of a person who is gifted in some way, like he or she may be born beautiful and good looking. This is actually something not in someone's hands and is completely at the disposal of nature. Some examples of people who achieve greatness include Albert Einstein, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, etc. These people were talented, but they worked really hard to achieve greatness in their respective fields. They faced a lot of struggles in life and kept moving forward for success. An example of a person whose circumstances made him great is Harrison Ford. He was not happy for the roles that were given to him, so he became a carpenter for survival, which was a blessing in disguise. A young director, George Lucas, hired Ford to install some cabinets in his house. Just like that, Ford was invited by George to audition for a film called American Graffiti, and eventually he got the role. Next year, another director, Francis Ford Coppola, hired Ford to enlarge his office and casted him in his film called The Conversation. Later, Ford was cast in Star Wars in 1977 and 2 sequels, and later he was also cast as Indiana Jones, which became one of the most famous characters of cinema. One thing to learn here is that no matter what category of greatness you have from the 3 types mentioned in the quote, you should look forward to work hard and use your mind to find solutions of different problems of your life, because all 3 types of greats work hard in some way or the other. Quote number 4. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. This means that the name we give to something is not the real thing. Rose is something which smells sweet, but it does not matter what we call it. We can call it Zoes, Vos, Toes, but it still remains something that smells amazing. Reality of something remains the same whatever you call it. This means that if the world calls a certain person as failure, that does not make him or her a failure, because a person is what he or she is. Most people in the world are busy labeling either themselves or others. Very few people actually understand the reality and act accordingly. People often even label thoughts as good or bad, but the truth is there are no good and bad thoughts. One thing to learn from this is that we should look at reality as it is and act accordingly. Quote number 5, cowards die many times before the deaths, the valiant never taste of death but once. This means that cowards die their entire lives and are buried after they expire. Courageous people live all their lives and die only once. Die here means to stop. People who are afraid to try or to take risks often tend to become stagnant in their lives and the growth actually stop. However, brave people keep moving and continue to improve. Even if they feel fear quite strongly, they never stop trying. One example of this is that of Alexander the Great. He was fearless during his time and always led from the front as a king does. He never lost a battle in his entire life and created a vast empire. He had no fear at all of physical injury and was wounded several times on the battlefield. One thing to learn from this is that we should live fearlessly because fear inside you makes you weak and kills you in every single moment of your life. Quote number 6, my crown is called content, a crown that seldom kings enjoy. This means that a king may be great and may have a big empire, a lot of power and control, but most kings do not have peace or satisfaction. A king always has a fear of losing all that he has and may fear of being betrayed by his followers. A king always has to be alert and careful because many powers are constantly working secretly to overthrow the king and win over the empire. Even if we take the example of a chessboard, a king is the most important chess piece but is most under attack by the opponent in a game. On the other hand, people who are actually free in life and are content with it are actually happy, satisfied and at peace. These kind of people are real kings whose kingdom is the entire universe. One thing to learn from this is that we should always be content with what we have because this is something that even the greatest of kings can't enjoy.